At 31 years old, my own father grounded me. And no, that isn't a joke, a metaphor, or some quirky story I tell at parties. It was a cold, hard order, delivered with the same dead serious face he used when I was 13 and missed curfew. I was to stay in my room, in his house. No friends, no visitors, and absolutely no seeing her. Her was Sarah, my girlfriend of 3 months, and in my father's eyes, the source of all my disrespect. It was the absolute lowest point of my life, the ultimate symbol of his control over me, a punishment so ridiculous and infantilizing I felt like I was shrinking. I was trapped, worthless, and completely suffocated by a family that refused to let me be an adult. But what my father, in his infinite, tyrannical wisdom, didn't know was that a clock was ticking. In less than a week, my grandmother's will was going to be read. And I wasn't just about to inherit millions, I was about to inherit my freedom. To understand how a grown man gets grounded, you have to understand the house I grew up in. It wasn't really a house. It was more like a perfectly managed terrarium, and I was the specimen under the glass. My father, John, was the lead scientist, controlling every little thing. My mother, Helen, was his loyal lab assistant, always polishing the glass to make sure the specimen never got any funny ideas. Their love, or what passed for love, was conditional. It was a currency they'd give out for good behavior and snatch away at the first sign of an independent thought. It all started small, the way these things usually do. When other kids were learning to ride bikes by falling and scraping their knees, my father held onto the handlebars until I was 9, terrified I'd get a scratch. When I wanted to join the high school soccer team, he pulled out a binder of sports injury statistics and called it too risky. Instead, I was signed up for the debate team, a safer, more intellectual choice. He picked my college major, economics, because it was practical, and vetted my friends, writing off anyone he decided was unambitious. Every single choice was sold to me as being for my own good, a phrase that became the anthem of my gilded cage. The psychological game was just relentless, and it crept into everything. He never missed a chance to remind me how much they'd sacrificed, how everything they did was to give me a perfect life. This created a crushing guilt that settled deep in my bones. I second-guessed every decision, my own gut feelings totally drowned out by the echo of his voice. It left me with crippling indecisiveness. I couldn't even pick a restaurant for dinner without running through his mental list of approved cuisines. My self-esteem was in the basement, because I was convinced that without his guidance, I'd fail spectacularly. I've read that the long-term stress from this kind of control can lead to serious anxiety and depression, and honestly, it felt like I was grieving the life I was never allowed to live. My mother was a different kind of warden. While my father was direct, my mother was a master of the guilt trip. If I ever pushed back, even a little, she'd let out a dramatic sigh, her eyes would well up, and she'd whisper about how my rebellion was putting a strain on my father's heart. "You know how he worries," she'd say, making his health my problem. It was a two-front war on my independence. They were a perfectly dysfunctional team, my father the iron fist, and my mother the velvet glove that hid it. After college, I made the huge mistake of moving back home. It was supposed to be temporary, just a way to save money while I looked for a job in finance, the career he'd basically picked for me. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent in a family like that. The goalposts for my freedom just kept moving. First, I needed a job. I got one. Then, I needed to save a substantial down payment, a number that magically grew every time I got close. They had zero respect for my boundaries because, in their world, there weren't any. My room was supposedly mine, but my life was their property. My mom would tidy up and rifle through my drawers. My dad would demand to see my bank statements to make sure I was being responsible. It was a constant invasion, all disguised as parental care. For years, I just existed. I went to work, came home, ate whatever my mom made, and listened to my dad's lectures on everything from my investment portfolio to the socks I was wearing. My social life was a sterile, curated affair with the pre-approved children of their friends. It felt less like living and more like playing a part in a show I never auditioned for. I was lonely and deeply ashamed that I couldn't break free. It was a classic case of what they call adult child syndrome. I struggled with trust, with expressing my own feelings, and with having any sense of who I was outside of their expectations. Then Sarah came along. I met her at a happy hour I wasn't even supposed to be at. I'd told my parents I was working late. Sarah was just so vibrant, funny, and refreshingly her own person. She had her own place, her own thoughts, and a laugh that made me forget, for just a little while, the crushing weight of my life. For the first time, I felt like someone saw me for me, not for the person my parents wanted me to be. Our relationship was a secret, a little pocket of rebellion I guarded with my life. We'd have quiet dinners in neighborhoods my parents wouldn't be caught dead in. We'd go for walks in parks on the other side of town. For 3 months, it was my one act of defiance. And I was the happiest I'd ever been. Of course, it didn't last. My father, the warden, noticed I was acting different. I was happier. More distracted. He started questioning my late nights at the office. I'm pretty sure he checked my phone records. The big discovery happened on a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from a great dinner with Sarah, probably still had a dumb smile on my face. My father was waiting for me in the living room, my mother hovering right behind him. The air was thick with that familiar, awful tension. "Where were you?" he asked. His voice was way too calm. "Working late," I lied, my heart starting to hammer. "That's funny," he said, holding up his phone. On the screen was a picture of me and Sarah, laughing at an outdoor cafe. A family friend had seen us and, naturally, reported back. The explosion was biblical. He wasn't just mad, he was deeply, personally offended. He called Sarah a distraction, and nobody filling my head with stupid ideas. He accused me of being a liar, of being ungrateful. My mother jumped in, crying about how I was throwing my life away. They weren't just attacking my girlfriend, they were attacking the very idea that I could make a choice for myself. I actually tried to stand up for myself, for Sarah. I told him I was 31 and could date who I wanted. That's when I really set him off. His face was beet red, his finger pointed at me like a loaded gun. "You are acting like a child, so I will treat you like one," he spat. "You are grounded. 2 weeks. You will come straight home from work. You will not see that girl. You will not go out. You live under my roof, you follow my rules." The silence that followed was deafening. My mom looked horrified but, as usual, said nothing. I looked at my father, this man who had spent 3 decades building my prison, and just felt this cold, hollow despair. Being grounded at 31 was more than just humiliating, it was proof that I'd never be free. I was his property. I turned without a word, walked up to my childhood bedroom, and shut the door. The click of the latch felt like a key turning in a lock. I was a prisoner, with no idea that the cavalry was already on its way, in the form of a letter from my grandmother's lawyer. My grandmother, Eleanor, was always a quiet force in my life. She was my dad's mom, but they were nothing alike. He was loud and controlling, she was gentle, observant, and had this quiet strength I only really appreciate now. She had passed away about 3 months earlier, and while I was sad, my family's reaction was practical. My father immediately started talking about the estate and logistics. He just assumed everything would go to him. He was the eldest, the most responsible. In his head, it was a done deal. The call from her lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, came on day 3 of my grounding. I took it in my office with the doors shut, whispering like a secret agent. The reading of the will was scheduled for Monday, and he made it clear my presence was required. When I told my father, he just nodded. A flicker of greed crossed his face. He didn't mind me being there, he figured I was just a spectator for his big payday. That Monday, we drove to the lawyer's office in my dad's sterile, gray sedan. The silence was heavy. My father sat bolt upright, radiating entitlement. My mother just kept smoothing her skirt over and over. I felt completely numb, just a passenger in my own life. This was just another family event I was being dragged to. Mr. Abernathy's office was old school, all leather and paper. My aunt and uncle, Dad's younger siblings, were already there, looking nervous. They knew how my father operated. Mr. Abernathy started with the usual legal stuff, giving a few small things to my aunt and uncle. My dad was practically bouncing in his seat with impatience. He wanted to get to the main event, the house, the stocks, the cash. Then, Mr. Abernathy paused. He looked right at me for a split second. And now, he said, we come to the bulk of Eleanor's estate. It is to be handled through the Eleanor Vance Living Trust, established 5 years ago. My father leaned in. A trust, yes. And as the primary heir. Mr. Abernathy held up a hand. John, your mother was very specific. She wanted the terms read aloud, in their entirety, to the family. He put on his glasses and picked up a thicker document. The Eleanor Vance Trust, he began, is designed to provide for future generations. However, Eleanor was very clear about its administration. She saw the dynamics within her family and wanted to ensure her legacy was used for growth and independence, not for control. My father's face was starting to harden. This wasn't in his script. To that end, Mr. Abernathy continued, she has designated a neutral third party, our firm, to act as the primary trustee. The trust's assets, which total approximately $4,700,000, are to be managed according to the following structure. The heir went out of the room. $4.7 million. My father's knuckles were white on the armrests. The trust stipulates, the lawyer said, his voice steady, that the primary beneficiary, the recipient of the remainder of the trust and its income, is her grandson. He looked right at me. You. Everything just stopped. The hum of the air conditioning, the sounds from the street, it all faded away. My father, my mother, my aunt, my uncle, they all slowly turned and stared at me. My own brain was just static. It didn't make sense. Me? There's been a mistake, my father boomed. He's my son. He lives with me. I manage his finances. It should come to me, to manage for him. There is no mistake, John, Mr. Abernathy said calmly. Then he read the next part, and it was like my grandmother was speaking right into the room. The document includes a personal note from Eleanor. It reads, I have watched my grandson struggle for his own life under the weight of his father's love, a love that more closely resembles ownership. I fear that if I leave my assets to my son, they will only become another bar in the cage he has built around his own child. This money is not a reward, it is a tool. It is a key. I leave it to him, and to him alone, with the sole instruction that he use it to build a life of his own choosing, to find his own happiness, and to finally be free. I trust him to do this more than I trust anyone else. Complete and utter silence. My father's face went from red to a pasty white. He looked at me with this terrifying mix of rage and betrayal. My mother was crying, but not for me. They were tears of loss. They'd lost control. Mr. Abernathy then explained the details. The trust was smartly designed to protect me from myself, ironically, the very immaturity they had fostered in me. I'd get some money right away, then more at 35 and 40. It was a fortress of financial independence, built for me by the one person who saw I was suffering. I don't remember leaving the office. The car ride home was a pressure cooker. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. My mother just kept shooting me these panicked, pleading looks. When we got back to his house, the dam finally broke. And it was ugly. The second the front door closed, my father spun on me. "What did you do?" he roared. "How did you manipulate her? You went behind my back and poisoned her against me." "I didn't do anything," I said, my head still spinning. "I had no idea." "Liar," he screamed. "I was her son. This is my money. Our family's money." And that became their new mantra. The money wasn't mine, it was family property. The grounding was instantly forgotten, replaced by a much sneakier form of control. They weren't trying to lock me in my room anymore, they were trying to lock up my future. That first night was just the start of a whole campaign against me. First came the guilt trips, led by my mother. She'd find me alone, her eyes all red, and start talking about their financial worries. "We were counting on that inheritance," she'd say, her voice trembling. "It doesn't seem fair, does it? That you, with no responsibilities, should have so much while we struggle." She was a master, framing their greed as basic fairness and my inheritance as some great injustice. Then came my father's angle, pure intimidation. He'd corner me and lecture me. "You don't know the first thing about managing money," he'd scoff. "You'll blow it all in a year. You need my guidance to protect you from yourself." He demanded I give him power of attorney, even leaving printouts of articles about broke lottery winners on my desk. He was trying to reinforce the idea he'd drilled into me my whole life: I was incompetent without him. When I refused, they escalated. They called a family meeting, which was really just an ambush. My father laid out his proposal: I would sign documents to create a family fund. He, as the most experienced, would manage it and give everyone, including me, an allowance. He pitched it as a way to keep the family together, but it was just a bald-faced power grab. He was trying to rebuild my prison, only this time with gilded bars. "This isn't about control," he said, staring me down. "This is about a responsibility you are not equipped to handle." I felt that old, familiar fear, that urge to just give in. It was awful. The worst part was how they tried to isolate me. They started bad-mouthing Sarah again, but it was more vicious this time. "See what happens when you let people like that into your life," my dad said. "She's a gold digger. She's putting these foolish ideas in your head." They were trying to cut off my only lifeline, my only source of real support. The grounding might have been over, but the surveillance was worse than ever. I felt like I was drowning. The money that was supposed to free me had become a new, heavier chain. For about a week, I almost caved. The lifetime of conditioning was a powerful force. But then I'd remember my grandmother's face, and I'd reread her letter. Asterisk, it is a key. Asterisk. I also started talking to Sarah in secret, using a burner app. Hearing her voice was my anchor to reality. She didn't care about the money. Her first question was, "Are you okay?" She reminded me that my family wasn't normal, that their demands were insane. "This is your chance," she told me one night. "Don't let them take it from you." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about money. It was about my life. It was about honoring my grandmother's last wish. It was time for the man to finally stand up. The turning point came on a Saturday morning. I woke up with that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach, but this time, something else was mixed in with it, a cold, hard anger. I went downstairs, and of course, they were waiting for me. My father was at the kitchen table with a stack of legal documents in front of him. An ambush. "We need to settle this," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "I had my lawyer draw these up. It's a simple transfer agreement for the family fund. Sign them." It wasn't a request. It was an order. I looked at the papers. I looked at his arrogant face. I looked at my mother's pleading expression. And I thought about my grandmother's letter. I thought about Sarah. I thought about 31 years of being treated like a possession. The anger burned the fear right out of me. I took a deep breath. "No," I said. The word just hung there. My father blinked. "What did you say?" I said no, I repeated, my voice stronger. I looked him right in the eye. "I'm not signing anything. Grandma gave this to me, and I'm going to honor her wishes." His face started turning red. "Don't be a selfish fool. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me?" I actually laughed. It was a bitter, empty sound. "You mean everything you've done to me? You didn't raise a son. You raised a hostage. You've controlled every part of my life. You don't get to do it anymore." My mother gasped. "Don't you dare speak to your father that way." "I'm not speaking to my father," I said, turning to her. "I'm speaking to my warden." "And you? You've been his deputy this whole time, crying and manipulating me every time I took a breath without his permission. Is that love?" They were in total shock. They were so used to me just rolling over. My father stood up, trying to use his size to intimidate me like always. "You live in my house," he bellowed. "Not for long," I said calmly. "This is when I played my hand." The day before, I'd met with Mr. Abernathy, hired a financial advisor, and talked to a realtor. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a key, and placed it on the table. "This is the key to my new apartment," I said. "The lease is signed. First month's rent and security deposit are paid. My friends are coming to help me move out this afternoon." Then, I pulled out a checkbook from my new bank account. I wrote out a check, my hand perfectly steady, and slid it across the table. "What's this?" he whispered, his voice a mix of confusion and anger. "That," I said, "is for 31 years of room and board. A generous amount for every month I've lived here as an adult. We're even. You can't hold this house over my head anymore." He stared at the check, then at me. The rage in his eyes was being replaced by total bewilderment. His power, his control over my shelter and my money, had just crumbled to dust. He had no leverage left. "You can't just leave," my mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We're your family." "A family doesn't hold its members captive," I said, my voice softer now. "A family wants them to be happy. Grandma knew that. She gave me a chance at a real life. And I'm going to take it." I turned and walked upstairs to pack. I only took the things that mattered: clothes, books, a few photos. The rest, the debate trophies, the suits my father picked, the person I used to be, I left it all behind. An hour later, with Sarah by my side, I walked out of that house for the last time and didn't look back. The air outside had never smelled so sweet. It's been 2 years since I walked out of that house. And I can tell you, freedom is worth more than any amount of money. The money was the tool that broke the lock, but the freedom, I had to build that for myself. The first few months were a wild mix of exciting and terrifying. Living alone for the first time at 31 meant learning everything from scratch. There were moments of sheer panic where I was tempted to call them, but I knew the psychological chains were much harder to break than the physical ones. That's why the best investment I made wasn't in stocks, it was in therapy. My therapist helped me unpack 3 decades of control. We worked on building my self-esteem, trusting my own gut, and setting healthy boundaries. I learned that the anxiety and indecisiveness that had defined me weren't my fault, they were symptoms. Healing is a long road, but for the first time, I feel like I'm actually getting to know myself. Sarah and I are still together, and our relationship is better than ever. She's been my rock, celebrating every small win with me, from buying my own couch to quitting the finance job I hated. Oh yeah, I quit my job. About a year ago, I walked away from the career my father had planned for me. I'm now taking classes in landscape architecture, a secret passion I never would have dared to pursue before. The trust gives me the security to build a life on my terms, not his. I haven't gone crazy with the money. I live in a comfortable apartment and drive a reliable car. The biggest luxury it's given me is the absence of fear. I don't fear bills. I don't fear failure. And I definitely don't fear my father. As for my family, our relationship is distant. After a period of angry silence, they tried to reconnect, but only on their old terms. My mother would call with passive-aggressive comments. My father sent a letter offering to forgive me if I would just see reason. I've held my boundaries. Our talks are rare and superficial now. I've accepted that they'll probably never change. The last I heard, they were telling relatives about their ungrateful son. It's sad, but it's no longer my burden to carry. My grandmother gave me a gilded key. My parents thought the gold was the point, the $4.7 million. But they missed the real treasure. The true gilding wasn't the money in the bank, it was the golden light of a life lived on your own terms. It's the freedom to choose your own path, make your own mistakes, and love who you want to love. That's a fortune you can't put a number on. I went from being grounded in their world to being gilded in my own, and that has made all the difference. This journey has taught me so much about self-worth and boundaries. I know there are a lot of people out there stuck in similar situations. If my story connected with you, I'd love to hear from you. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this story compelling, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support really means a lot. Thanks for watching.